Hospitals are a place that most folks go to get better, but when these institutes get abandoned, sometimes there's dark reasons why that should maybe stay buried. With dark tales of poor patient treatment, rising death rates, hauntings, and more, it's time to learn about some places that should stay darn well avoided. For starters, there's this abandoned hospital in Victoria, Australia, known as the Beechwood Asylum. It was originally known as the Erie Mayday Hills Lunatic Asylum. Yeah, it was not great. Why did it open? Because the only other mental hospital open at the time had overcrowding. It operated for 128 years before it shut down in 1995. In the asylum's confines, more than 9,000 prisoners perished, including a young woman who was for some reason mysteriously tossed from a tall window. Yeah, people still find her when they go exploring there today, and depends on her mood how you will be received. Sometimes she's friendly, sometimes she ignores you, other times, avoid. Before the owner started providing care for tuberculosis patients, the Tranquille Sanatorium was constructed in 1907 as a farm, and then it became the go-to place for folks with tuberculosis. Around it grew a tiny settlement of the same name, containing lovely gardens, homes, a fire brigade, and a number of facilities. This hospital closed in 1958 and reopened to treat the mentally sick in 1959 until 1983, before it was shuttered for good. So the hospital's priorities way back when included teaching self-care and halting the spread of tuberculosis. The infected were treated with a tight rest schedule, nutritious food, and fresh air. Nursing staff reported seeing patients' face covered in ice on winter mornings because they would leave them outside on porches overnight to try and treat their disease. When good medications were launched in the late 1940s, the hospital's dynamics underwent a significant transformation. At the time, sanatoriums kind of lost their value, and that's when the facility was forced to close down. Patients, though, had a lot of weird stuff going on. They were prohibited from starting their own post offices, and they were encouraged to work for free as a form of therapy. Visitors were not usually able to donate supplies like food, clothing, cash, and other necessities. And in response to objections from families who wanted to keep their loved ones close, 55 patients who were not deemed capable of returning to society were transferred to other institutions when this one closed. Even now, the institution is plagued by bizarre orbs, unexplained feelings of grief and anxiety when you walk on the grounds, and crazy temperature swings. There's the ghost of a nurse who was brutally killed by a patient who likes to hang out and haunt anybody who dares to enter. Many abandoned buildings take on a feeling of malevolence thanks to their decay, but the rotting complex of buildings that was once the Forest Haven Asylum was known as a place of death and awfulness long before it stopped being used. Opening in 1925 to serve residents of the District of Columbia, Forest Haven was initially a beacon of progress and quality in treating young souls who were mentally ill, handicapped, or otherwise unable to function normally in society. With over 30 structures on the 250-acre campus, the inmates were taught job skills in a communal farm colony environment that provided them with essential training and an emotionally empowering sense of community. Well, for the first couple of decades, allegedly. By the 1960s, funding for the sprawling institution began to dry up, and devastating cutbacks began to afflict the asylum. Recreational programs were discontinued, and the staff was reduced and replaced with unqualified employees. As the years rolled by, things got progressively worse as the doctors, nurses, and caregivers began taking out their frustrations on the patients, many of whom were harmed bodily and in other ways, and that's if they were given any attention at all. Eventually, a lot of patients died of neglect and related causes. Now, the dead would be passed through the basement morgue and eventually buried in an unmarked field nearby. I mean, like hundreds and hundreds of people died, and according to one report, some were even the subject of medical experiments before the entire institution was shuttered only in 1991. As if the decaying remains of this horrific asylum did not give the site a haunting air, there have also been reports of, those shallow graves, and with shallow graves come a lot of ghosts. I wouldn't recommend going there. Established in 1827 as the Genesee County Poorhouse, then the Genesee County Infirmary added in 1938, the Rolling Hills Asylum was originally a working farm that became a dumping ground for the cast-offs of society. Orphans mingled with what were called lunatics at the time, and the unclaimed dead were buried on the property. Over 1,700 documented deaths and hundreds of more not accounted for. Known for Class A EVPs, shadow people, doors slamming, and much more, this place is haunted with a capital H. It is allegedly the second most haunted location in all of North America and number 4 in the world. On April 26 of 2008, the Connecticut Paranormal Encounters and Research Team did an overnight public ghost hunt at Rolling Hills. So originally they went on the general public tour, and afterwards watched this short video. Apparently there were about 50 people present during this little tour group, and the team was allowed to hang around afterwards and do their own investigation. So they went to the basement area because they didn't want to disturb the tours, and they used a lot of common ghost hunting devices, digital audio recorders, video recorders with night vision, thermometer gauges, EMF readers, flash cameras, you name it. So when it came to what did they catch on camera, they did get a lot of orbs and pictures, some being more impressive than others, and apparently at one point, when they went near a nurse's station door, there was a lot of mist formation around it. On film, they did catch a rather interesting find using a flashlight for an experiment on the second floor hallway, where the doors to the solarium were known to move on their own. And also, you get a lot of shadows of people standing and walking behind the doors that aren't there. So the folks who were doing the investigating placed a flashlight on the other side of the doors in the solarium while they sat in the hallway to see if they could catch sight of any of these shadows walking about. So there was no way in or out of the solarium other than this door. So after placing that flashlight, they caught a lot of ghosts walking by. And also, the flashlight kept flickering. To note, the flashlight had not had any problems with flickering previously. All the batteries were fresh. This had never happened. They also caught a lot of EVPs with their digital audio recorders. One very impressive one was when one fellow was trying to provoke the shadow people into coming into the hallway, and following a request of being like, hey, come on out, they heard back an elderly lady yelling, "You, go away," which they didn't hear that when they were actually recording. This was just afterwards. When they actually arrived at the facility earlier in the day, by the way, one of the team members had felt a dizziness that stayed with them while they were there all day and only went away when they left the area. When they went to go investigate the electrotherapy room, they experienced 2 episodes of sharp pain that lasted approximately 1 minute to the left side of their head and right above the left eye, which is not fun, and it was only in that room. So they returned on another date for a private investigation. Once again, normal day, super chill. Well, they heard a disembodied voice calling out the name of one of their investigators, and 2 other people heard it, and you could hear it on the recorders. They were like, nobody's here to call it this name. When they were investigating a part of the house that had nobody in it, there was a lot of sounds of walking, shuffling around, and when they went to look and find it, nobody was there. And finally for today, built in 1884 on what was then the outskirts of Hamilton, Ontario, Century Manor was the second major structural component of the Hamilton Asylum for the Insane, an institution initially established for the treatment of folks who drank a lot. The story of this manor is an unusually grim one, even for an asylum. Newspaper articles published in the late 19th and early 20th centuries documented at least 9 self-taken lives in the building, as well as several attempts made by inmates who escaped the hospital. This place was also the scene of several strange accidents and horrific crimes. One female patient fell to her death while attempting to escape out a window using a rope made from bed sheets, while another had her skull crushed by a falling elevator. One particularly troublesome male inmate was allegedly harmed by orderlies to the point of death, while another split open the head of the asylum's head baker with a weapon. The staggering number of heinous crimes committed at Century Manor are more comprehensible in light of the appalling state in which the institution was kept. As one former inmate put it in a letter to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, "Your insane asylum at Hamilton is an outrage to civilization. Wretched vileness is the order of the institution, and more things I can't say." Of all the dramas that unfolded on the stage of this place, perhaps the strangest was a fire that mysteriously broke out on the building's top floor on the morning of August 1st of 1911. Firefighters who battled the blaze claimed that 3 of the inmates, whom they rescued from the burning building, broke away from them and leapt back into the inferno. When the embers finally cooled, firefighters found 8 bodies among the ashes, including somebody who had burned to death in their cell, as well as 5 men huddled together in a small room. The historic building shut its doors for good in 1995 and has sat empty ever since, with a lot of ghost stories. Well, that's it for me once again, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident ooky spooky girly. See y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.